Kendrick Lamar brought out the LA Avengers last night to dance on Drake's grave for over 4 hours straight and give us one of the most legendary hip-hop concerts in history. Now, while the main objective of the show was to put on new LA talent and basically unify the city, it also served its purpose as a victory lap for Kendrick Lamar after destroying Drake with the 4 diss tracks that he dropped last month. But this show was really the nail in the coffin and destroyed any chance that Drake has of redeeming himself after this beef. And more than anything, it was just an absolute legendary moment for hip-hop for many different reasons that we'll touch on in this video. Now, Drake fans did everything they could to try to downplay the impact or success that this show had within the culture. Like, they were making tons of excuses online. The main one being that at the beginning of the show, because it was live streamed, you could see that the crowd wasn't full. So they tried to make it seem like Kendrick couldn't sell out a show in his own city. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The arena that it was hosted in could only hold around 20,000 people. But apparently, when tickets went on sale, there was allegedly 100,000 people in the queue waiting to buy tickets, which shows the demand to see Kendrick Lamar live is insane. And once Kendrick got on the stage, the crowd went mental, screaming, yelling, chanting the bars word for word. Like, the crowd was so insane that Drake's team had to do damage control. And Baka Not Nice, Drake's artist slash friend slash maybe bodyguard, we don't really know, the guy who Kendrick mentions when he says, and Baka got a weird case, why is he around? Yeah, so that guy basically during the show was posting videos of Drake performing the song Sicko Mode and captioned it saying, this is how it's done, basically saying like, this is how loud a crowd should be, and that Drake has louder crowds than Kendrick. But it's really not about that, and that's not why Drake looks so bad when the crowd is yelling at this Kendrick show as loud as they were. See, both artists are massive. Both artists have had crowds chanting their songs word for word. We've seen crowds in Mexico singing Kendrick's song Humble word for word. We've seen crowds all around the world singing Marvin's Room with Drake, right? Like, it's normal that the most massive rappers in the world with dedicated fan bases are going to have loud crowds chanting their songs word for word. But what's different is that these songs were Kendrick attempting to eliminate Drake from the culture and pick apart each element and flaw in his character. And when he performed these records, the crowd was chanting it word for word. Even when Kendrick went into those pockets when he started rapping super fast or dropping more complex bars, you still found the crowd singing these songs bar for bar, showing that Kendrick brought that excitement back and lyricism back into the sport of hip-hop. And worse for Drake, despite all his efforts trying to downplay the success of these records by saying that Kendrick Lamar paid for fake streams or fake numbers, having crowds like this sing every single diss word for word shows you that these songs have resonated with the people organically, and it wasn't only the artists on stage, but it was also the fans that these records have unified. Now, speaking of the fans, the crowd at the show was insane and showed a lot of Drake's former collaborators and friends were very big fans of Kendrick, despite him ruthlessly attacking Drake for the last 2 months and doing an entire show full of Drake disses. See, there was tons of celebrities, rappers, and ballplayers in attendance. You had guys like Lebron in the crowd, you had The Weeknd in the crowd, Rick Ross, SZA was even there in disguise, and Drake's favorite op, Kanye West, even had his daughter in the crowd chanting the lines A minor and certified PDF file. It's obviously embarrassing for Drake to know that a lot of people that he's publicly considered friends were attending this show, which was basically Kendrick Lamar's victory lap in his defeat of Drake. What's even worse is, throughout Drake's diss tracks, he was trying to align himself with other guys from the West Coast like YG, but even YG made an appearance at the show, performed at the show, and danced to Kendrick's diss tracks as he performed them. But funny enough, the Game wasn't there, and that was someone else that Drake mentioned in his diss tracks who I guess is showing his loyalty to Drake in this entire thing, or he's still upset that Dr. Dre didn't invite him to perform at the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now, another special guest in the crowd was Kendrick Lamar's fiancée, Whitney, who Drake also mentioned several times in his diss songs against Kendrick, trying to imply that the two had been engaged for years but never got married because there was issues. They were cheating on each other, Kendrick was living alone, and Whitney was actually having an affair with Kendrick's manager, Dave Free. Oh, and Drake also mentioned that Kendrick assaulted Whitney. And in my opinion, this was the lowest point of the beef because both of them were just kind of dropping crazy allegations on one another, and there was no real proof, and the fans were just meant to kind of pick up the pieces and see what was real and what was fake. But given the fact that Whitney attended the show in support of Kendrick, it's safe to say that he probably never assaulted her. And if they did have any issues in their marriage, it's safe to say they probably patched things up. And while Dave Free, the guy who Drake accused of sleeping with Kendrick's wife, was not actually in attendance of the show, he was listed as one of the executive producers of the show within the credits. So it's safe to say that him and Kendrick are on good terms as well, which almost completely discredits all of Drake's allegations against Kendrick in his diss records. Now, the show was kicked off by DJ Head, who was showing love and bringing out a lot of newer, lesser-known regional artists. And I hate to bring it back to Drake, but this also makes you think, like, Drake has never done a show like this where he puts on all of Toronto. Yeah, he's had tons of OVO fests, but aside from his own artists like Party Next Door or The Weeknd, he's never had a show documenting new local talent within Canada. And that's another reason why this show was so legendary. From the beginning, even the way they promoted the whole thing, it never seemed like the spotlight was just meant to be on Kendrick Lamar throughout this entire thing. The purpose of the show was to bring the city of LA together, to unify everyone, to uplift everyone, to celebrate the victory that they took by having a West Coast banger at the top of the charts, to put on and introduce the world to the new artists within the city, and to also highlight and appreciate the talent of all the legends within the West Coast. And with this show, Kendrick showed us that all the claims that Drake made that he gets more love in the city that Kendrick's from are just complete BS, as he sold out the show in minutes and had the entire crowd chanting every bar word for word the entire show. But not only that, he also showed Drake that not only does he get more love in his own city than Drake gets in his own city, but he also shows more love to his own city than Drake shows to his own city. Now, that was kind of a mouthful, but basically what I'm trying to say is Kendrick puts on for his people, for his culture, for his city, way more than Drake does for his own city. And that emphasizes and highlights all the claims that Kendrick made throughout this beef, saying that Drake is not a colleague of the culture, he's a colonizer of the culture. Now, after great performances from DJ Mustard, Tyler the Creator, YG, Roddy Ricch, DJ Head, and more, we finally got to Kendrick's part of the show, which electrified the crowd off the rip. In my opinion, the intro was one of the highlights of the show. He walked out to the song Euphoria. And I mean, he rapped that song the same way he sang it in the studio. Like, his breath control is insane. His performance is insane. He's easily probably the best rap performer in the entire game right now. Like, that's a 6-minute diss track just full of straight bars. And Kendrick didn't have a backtrack. He was rapping it straight off the instrumental. He didn't forget or miss a single bar. He had the crowd chanting the one-liners like, what is it, the braids? And he even changed some bars by saying, give me Tupac's ring back and I might give you a little respect. This is in reference to the fact that Drake bought Tupac's famous ring for about $1 million. And Kendrick here is basically saying, you don't deserve that ring. You're not part of this culture. I deserve that ring because I embody Tupac's legacy and what he stood for. And all you've done is disrespect and mock the legacies of the biggest, most legendary artists in the culture. He emphasized this with even the outfit that he was wearing, because Kendrick was basically wearing the same exact outfit that Tupac wore at the 1994 Source Awards. And he also spoke to the crowd and said, oh, you won't let nobody mock or imitate our legends, huh? He said this after the crowd was consistently chanting every diss against Drake word for word. And he's referencing the fact that not only did Drake purchase Tupac's ring, but he also used Tupac's AI vocals in one of his diss tracks, which Tupac's estate took extreme offense to. They threatened to sue Drake if he didn't take the song down, and was the first step in the entire West Coast turning on Drake in this entire battle. And again, this entire concert was just the nail in the coffin for Drake's legacy and reputation within the West Coast and within hip-hop in general. Throughout the show, Kendrick just kept performing all of his classic hits. He brought out Schoolboy Q, Absol, J-Rock, all his former collaborators. They reunited as Black Hippie. I'm kind of upset that they didn't perform their UOE and No remix. That was like the biggest disappointment for me during the entire show. Oh, and the fact that Kendrick never brought Baby Keem out. Maybe because Drake accused Baby Keem of ghostwriting for Kendrick. But by far the most insane moment of this entire show was when Kendrick brought out Dr. Dre. Dre came out, they performed some classic tracks. Dre called Kendrick one of the best rappers of all time. Then Dre said that he needed a moment of silence as he was walking off the stage. The crowd went silent and everyone thought that it was going to be a tribute to someone who passed away. But really it was just Dre doing the intro to Not Like Us, which popped off the most insane moment of the concert and one of the most insane moments in live music history. And even worse for Drake, it ultimately showed us that even one of the forefathers of the genre is putting his stamp and his approval on this diss track. Now, Kendrick Lamar abused the crowd's love for this song as he performed it 5 times. At one point, for one of the performances, he brought out DJ Mustard. Then I believe it was the 3rd performance of the track that he just stayed silent and let the crowd rap the entire first verse of that song. Sorry, it was more like half of that first verse, but it's just insane that the crowd knew every single word and they were loud enough and hyped enough where even through the stream online, you could hear them chanting the song word for word. Kendrick didn't have to say a single bar. Then by the 4th performance of the song, he assembled the LA Avengers on stage and unites the city while everyone was dancing as he performed the song another 2 times. After the 4th performance, he stops the music to take a picture with everyone on stage. This included Russell Westbrook, DeMar DeRozan, DJ Mustard, YG, all of Black Hippie, Roddy Ricch, and more. But why this was so important for the city is that there was a bunch of different gangs that were unified and celebrating together in an attempt to stop the violence that plagues the city. This was a very powerful way to close out the show, and Kendrick also mentioned that the city hasn't been the same since Nipsey Hussle and Kobe Bryant passed away. So to get positive moments like these is not just a victory for Kendrick, but this show entirely was a very big victory for the entire city. And that picture of everyone on stage together, that better be Kendrick Lamar's next album cover. It would look extremely similar to his To Pimp a Butterfly album cover. Now, speaking of new albums, we didn't hear any new music announcement from Kendrick, but between him opening the show up with Euphoria and playing all of his diss records except for Meet the Grams, it would have been hilarious if he played like just part of that song just to troll the crowd a little bit. But yeah, between him performing all these diss records live, also having merch that had Nuho King's fried rice on a t-shirt in reference to the fact that Dre got jumped at the restaurant Nuho King in Toronto, all of this shows that Kendrick is ready to keep going in this back and forth and that really he's hungrier than ever. Now, we're also supposed to be getting a Not Like Us video in the coming days. Apparently, they're going to be shooting it on Saturday. And I'm sure that a lot of the footage from the concert will go into that music video. I mean, he performed the song like 5 times. He has more than enough footage to make an entire music video out of it. And this was really just a massive victory lap for Kendrick. Like, he was just basking in all the glory. Like, as the crowd was chanting A minor, he just stopped the music. He was just like swimming in midair, kind of just euphorically dancing to the crowd's chants, no pun intended. And I think this is about to mark the beginning of one of the most legendary Kendrick Lamar eras we've ever witnessed. But speaking of new eras for artists, it was also revealed that after the show, a fan messaged Drake saying, yo, we need new music from you. Like, Toronto can't be taking this type of disrespect from the West Coast. And Drake actually liked the message, insinuating that there will be new music from Drake on the way as well. And it really makes you think, what's next for these two guys? Like, again, while this show was amazing and a legendary moment for the city of LA and for hip hop in general, I think it was meant to more highlight and unify the city more than put the spotlight directly on Kendrick. Whereas on the flip side, Drake's OVO Fest or even J. Cole's Dreamville Festival is usually meant to kind of highlight them and their legacy specifically. But this was the opposite, and we really didn't get any new music announcement from Kendrick. So was this just a show for his city, or was this a show to kick off the new era of music that we're about to be getting from him? And I mean, with Drake, like, it's tough. I mean, almost the entire industry was at this show, and if they weren't, then they were probably still active in this beef, expressing their dislike towards Drake at some point or another in the last few months. And with Drake having really like no friends in the industry at this point, besides maybe 21 Savage and Lil Yachty, it makes you think, what type of music is he about to release next? Who is he going to collaborate with? What direction is he going to go in? What is he going to be referencing in this new music? Is he going to keep this beef alive? And will Kendrick keep this beef alive as well in his new music? Let me know and I'll catch you guys in the next one.